Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is JP Tasker. I'm a reporter at CBC News, and I'll be the moderator for today's press event. I don't have all of your names down here, but I do know that the Honourable Minister Arif Virani, Justice Minister, is here. Chandra, Arya, the Member of Parliament for Nepean, and Iqra, Khalid, the Member of Parliament from Mississauga, Erin Mills, are here to make an announcement on increasing access to justice for Muslim communities in Ontario and Manitoba. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Merci tout le monde d'être ici aujourd'hui. This today is an important announcement that touches both justice and Muslim communities in our country. It's a great pleasure today for me to welcome a number of my colleagues here. I am joined today, first and foremost, by Minister of Justice and Attorney General Arif Virani. Also, several colleagues of mine from the Muslim Caucus. It includes Parliamentary Secretary Iqra Khalid and Parliamentary Secretary Talib Noor Mohammed. My name is Humaira Jaleel. Je suis le député de Purefond d'Honneur. I'm also the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Diversity, Inclusion and Disability. I'm also joined here by Omar Al-Gabra, Member of Parliament, and Majid Johari, Member of Parliament, Shafkat Ali, Member of Parliament, and Selma Zahid, Member of Parliament. Today I want to acknowledge that we are also on Indigenous territory. This is an important marker for us. We are here to welcome two important stakeholders in our country, both from Manitoba and from Ontario. I'm here on stage with Iman Mohammed from the Muslim Legal Support Center and Humaira Jaleel from Healthy Muslim Families, joining us virtually from Winnipeg. Let me also take a moment to mention that this month, October, is the Canadian Islamic History Month. Ça, c'est le mois canadien de l'histoire islamique. Our government is taking important steps to provide a fairer and equal justice system for everyone, including Muslim communities. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Humaira Jaleel from the Healthy Muslim Families, joining us virtually from Winnipeg. Please, Humaira.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody can hear me. Members of the press, respected representatives from Justice Canada, the Honorable Minister of Justice and Attorney General Arif Virani, and distinguished guests. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to you all. I'm joining today from Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'm here not only as a representative of Healthy Muslim Families, but also a member of the diverse communities that make up our wonderful country, Canada. In this month of October, where we commemorate Islamic History Month, we honor the rich history, contributions, and vibrant cultures of Muslims, Canadian Muslims that are interwoven into the fabric of our wonderful country. It is particularly poignant and heartwarming that today's funding announcement for our project, Access to Justice for Racialized Communities, coincides with a month that celebrates the legacy and presence of Islamic communities in Canada. Through this invaluable funding and support provided by Justice Canada, our project seeks to be a beacon of empowerment and education, a beacon for equitable access to justice for all. This initiative designed with the intent to enlighten the most vulnerable in our communities through legal literacy programs, workshops, and materials, increasing awareness about rights and responsibilities under Canadian law. Above all, this project is about crafting culturally attuned legal advice by delivering legal counsel and services that are not only accurate and reliable, but also reflect a deep respect and understanding of our diverse cultures and traditions. We do this by offering weekly legal clinics that are open to all. We also do this by offering mediation and conflict resolution services, especially in family matters. mediation and dispute resolution that are deeply cognizant and respectful of the unique culture and social dynamics of our communities. Finally, this project is about amplifying voices, countering Islamophobia, advocating for and representing the issues and challenges experienced by racialized communities, ensuring our voices shape the future practices and policies in our legal system. Access to Justice Project complements our other services, which are counseling and mediation, and also support for women who face gender-based violence. This investment of Justice Canada to our project is not merely financial. It is an investment in justice, an investment in equity and uplifting of communities that have historically faced barriers in accessing legal services. It is a step towards fostering a legal environment that resonates with understanding, respect, and inclusivity, echoing the principles we celebrate today during Islamic History Month. My heartfelt gratitude extends to Minister Virani and the dedicated team of Justice Canada for embracing our vision and propelling us towards a future where justice is not merely seen, but is deeply and inclusively experienced. We believe that Justice Canada's funding is a step in the right direction to address issues of access to justice and supporting marginalized communities to create a more inclusive society. So thank you, shukran.
Merci, Humaira Jaleel, de Healthy Muslim Families. Merci pour votre parole et votre travail. I'd like to now welcome to the podium Iman Mohammed from Muslim Legal Support Center. Please, Iman.
Thank you for having me here today, and assalamu alaikum to everybody. We express our profound gratitude to Justice Canada and Minister Virani for their support, recognizing the significant impact of their funding on our organization's resilience and success. This support has been instrumental in enabling us to provide vital and essential services to a community that is well in need of it. Their support has empowered the Muslim Legal Support Center to take a stance against Islamophobia and advocate for equitable legal access among Muslims in Ontario. Our initiative, Legal Education and Support for Racialized Communities in Ontario, offers tailored education, guidance, and assistance directly addressing the legal needs and cultural identities of Muslims and the Muslim community. It underscores the significance of delivering customized services that break down barriers for disadvantaged and traditionally marginalized groups, allowing them to have access to safe, inclusive, and welcoming spaces where their voices are valued and their needs are met. In these critical times, accessible and culturally sensitive services are paramount importance. The escalating threat of Islamophobia, inequality, and discrimination demands immediate attention. Hate crimes and prejudice have surged, instilling fear within Muslim individuals and families. Our community stands tall as a beacon of hope, alleviating this vulnerability, empowering individuals to address discrimination in all its forms and feel empowered enough to seek justice. This vital funding given to us by Justice Canada has enabled us to establish a community space that is not only safe, but a space where members of the community feel comfortable to access protection and advocacy in the face of injustices. Justice Canada's support goes beyond financial aid. It represents our shared commitment to addressing the pressing needs and to provide a voice to our community members and instill their belief in justice, accessibility, and inclusivity. As we continue this important work, we acknowledge our collective strength lies in breaking down barriers and fostering a community where every individual, irrespective of background or circumstances, is treated with fairness, dignity, and compassion. We are deeply and greatly appreciative of Justice Canada and Minister Virani for their support and are grateful to be able to continue this important work. Thank you.
Merci, Iman Mohammed, pour vos paroles. Thank you for your words and your work, and to your organization, Muslim Legal Support Center. I'd like to now invite my colleague, Iqra Khalid, Parliamentary Secretary, to take the podium, and also Member of Parliament from Mississauga Arya. Please, Iqra.
Bonjour tout le monde. Merci Samir. Je suis Iqra Khalid. Je suis députée pour Mississauga Arya. And I really want to thank you to everyone for joining us today. A special welcome to Iman Mohammed from the Muslim Legal Support Center and Humaira Jaleel from Healthy Muslim Families. Your work is important and it's inspiring. Thank you for telling us a little bit more about it. I also want to wish everyone the very best as we begin Canadian Islamic History Month. Islamic History Month is important to our community. The theme of this year is honoring the historical contributions of Muslim women, both in Canada and throughout history. Those contributions are many, they're varied in the arts, the sciences, and in society. And they are embodied in the work our recipients do in our communities every single day. And the two women, Iman and Humaira, who we just heard from. That work links directly to the steps that our government is taking to provide fair and equal access to justice for Muslim communities. A recent study by Statistics Canada showed that the majority of people facing serious legal problems do not turn to the formal justice system to resolve them. There are many reasons why that is. Some people may not be aware of their rights. Some do not know where to find help or might not be able to afford it. Others simply do not trust that they will be treated fairly. And let's be honest, systemic racism is also an obstacle. We must take steps to remove all these barriers because access to justice means access for everyone, no matter their background, their faith, their knowledge, or their income level. That is why our government supports community organizations that provide people with equitable and cultural relevant access to legal services and fair treatment in the justice system. Since its inception in 2019 as a pilot project through the Canadian Muslim Lawyers Association, the Muslim Legal Support Clinic has become an important source of legal support and information for Muslims in Ottawa and across Ontario. In Manitoba, Healthy Muslim Families works to strengthen and empower families through education, programs, services, and supports in line with Islamic values such as social responsibility. This is a vital part of improving access to justice for vulnerable community members. Our government is proud to support these two organizations. They are important partners in our efforts to help all people access their legal system and build stronger and more inclusive communities. And now, please help me welcome Minister Arif Virani to provide more details of our announcement. Merci beaucoup.
Hello, bonjour, assalamu alaikum. I wanted to start by saying thank you to Iqra for those powerful words and for that introduction. Thank you for touching on so many really, really important themes, and thank you, Iqra, for your leadership in this space as a parliamentarian and as a Muslim leader. Samir, thank you for getting us started. Thank you for your work as Master of Ceremonies here today. Merci beaucoup. And really, the most important two individuals who I want to acknowledge are Humaira and Iman. We had a brief time to chat just prior to the formal part of this announcement, and everything I've learned in those brief moments demonstrates the intense commitment of these two really incredible female leaders in terms of what they are doing to shape things and change the narrative in places like Ontario and throughout Manitoba, and their deep commitment to access to justice and ensuring that it is resonating for people around the country, particularly for the Muslim communities in which they serve. It's really impressive to me, and I think it should be not understated by all of you that are watching, about the array of people that are behind me right now. For those of you who are watching on camera, you can see maybe 3 or 4 people, but are a large number of parliamentarians here gathered behind me, and I think that demonstrates the unanimity of commitment and solidarity with this important issue. So when I see my colleagues Salma Zahid, Shafkat Ali, the Honorable Omar Al-Gabra, who has been a leader in this space for many, many decades, people like Majid, people like Talib, people like Leah Taylor-Roy, who came and had to be whisked away for other parliamentary duties, but came out of a sense of solidarity, I think it demonstrates the importance of what we're talking about today. And I'm proud to be part of this group. I also situate this in terms of where we are. This has actually been a pretty good week for diversity. And it's been a pretty good week for representation. And I'm going to echo the words of Humaira Al-Gawabi, who is our special envoy on Islamophobia, who at a different reception a couple of weeks ago said to me, representation really matters. And it does really matter. And this week we've seen the election for the first time ever in the Canadian House of Commons of a Black Canadian as Speaker of our chamber in the House. And that is something that's momentous, not just for the Black community in this country, but for all racialized Canadians and all Canadians that want to see themselves reflected in these important high offices. Literally the same day or the day after, in Manitoba, Humaira's province, we have seen elected the first premier of a province who is an Indigenous person, and that's Premier Designate Wab Kinew. These are historic moments, and they're not lost on all of us who believe so deeply in equity and diversity and believe in truly representing the diversity that Canada presents in our highest offices. And to those who say Canada is not a country of opportunity, I would say, well, witness those two events. Witness the panel of people that are behind me, that regardless of your color, of your background, of your religious faith, you have a place in Canada at the highest levels, and Canada is indeed a place of opportunity. And when we talk about Islamic History Month, you know, it is momentous to talk about the contributions of Muslims to this country. And Iqra mentioned that the focus is on Islamic women, and that is really, really critical. I will just say to you, it's not been lost on me, the weight that I bear and the responsibility that I have as the first ever Muslim Attorney General of this fine country. That is an important feat unto itself, but it's also an important responsibility and one that I don't wear lightly. But I think what's important in terms of sharing today is reflecting on sort of not just the history, but also where we are. And it's important to call out where we are by its name, and that name is Islamophobia. And again, I will credit the leadership of many parliamentarians, particularly MP and Parliamentary Secretary Iqra Khalid, for her leadership on that very issue and on that very term. But I think when you actually try and probe into what we're talking about when we talk about Islamophobia, you're talking about various things. You're talking about things that can relate to something as subtle as a comment, to things such as entrenched racist policies, and indeed, and the systemic racism and discrimination that Iqra highlighted, but also horrific acts of violence. And here I'm going to be personal because I'm here for a personal reason. If you do the tally going back to 2017, you will note that there are a lot of problems with hatred and intolerance in this country, but there have been fatal consequences for one particular community, and that is my community. That is the Muslim community. And when we reflect on the death of 6 individuals at the masjid, at the mosque in Sainte-Foy in January of 2017, when we reflect on the fatal stabbing of an individual in Rexdale outside of his mosque, and we reflect on the fact that 4 members of a family out for a walk were killed in London 2 years ago, we can see the incredibly brutal and fatal consequences of Islamophobia. And those are not incidences that I raise lightly because they're enormously difficult. They're difficult for me personally, they're difficult for my family, they're difficult for the families of the people that are standing behind me right now. And what I'll say to you is that in that difficulty, there's really only one option. You know, people often talk about two options, but I think there's really only one. And the option is actually seizing the reins of trying to turn those tragedies into positive acts that can address what we're seeing in Canada right now. And I think that's incumbent upon all of us to take the reins on as leaders, particularly as Muslim leaders, to demonstrate the kind of country that we can be and that we always aspire to be. And I'll say to you that in the wake of many of these incidences, there's often been responses that are poignant and very direct, and they encourage me. And I mean that very sincerely. And I think very particularly about my riding of Parkdale High Park and what happened after the Sainte Foy mosque attack and the gestures that people made. And I remember a class, a religious studies class at a school called Humberside Collegiate in my riding, and kids writing letters from their religious studies class, and those letters being displayed in the window of the Dawa Center, which is a mosque just outside of my riding in a community called Davenport. And the gesture that represented for that mosque. I hope many of you will remember the things that were called circles of safety, where people formed protective circles the very next Friday for Juma prayers to protect mosques around this country, including in my community, where people who stood up, and they were Catholics and Jews and people of no faith whatsoever, and from all walks of life, and they stood together in solidarity with the Muslim community. That's the kind of country that I believe in. That's the kind of country my colleagues believe in. But what's important about today is that it can't just be a response that is in the wake of a horrific attack, an act of violence. It's got to be a response that is daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly, because the fight against intolerance and hatred is with us, and it needs to be a constant priority for all of us. So why are we here today? We're here today because we're taking action. Donc effectivement, il s'agit de prendre des mesures pour rendre notre système de justice plus accessible et équitable, et de renforcer nos lois pour que tous et toutes puissent bénéficier également des droits et libertés que leur sont garantis dans la Charte canadienne de droits et libertés. Il s'agit de soutenir les organisations communautaires qui offrent, comme l'organisation de Humaira et de Iman, qui offrent à la communauté musulmane des programmes, des ressources et des services sûrs, respectueux et adaptés à la culture. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous sommes rassemblés aujourd'hui. As Iqra was saying, as many have said just thus far, these two organizations today that we are highlighting represent vital legal support and resources for Muslims in Ontario and in Manitoba. Everyone has a right to access the justice system. They should be able to do so in their communities. And what I'm very pleased about is the sensitivity that Humaira and Iman take in their approach to their work. And I'm going to digress here a little bit and just saying that when you talk about the Muslim community in Canada, Muslims around the planet, there's a lot of diversity even within that cohort. But everything I've learned from these two incredible female leaders is that they're taking the strides to demonstrate a sensitive and culturally appropriate and linguistically tailored response to that diversity in and of itself, in terms of the language of the services they provide, in terms of the professional staff that they have on board. So I'm very pleased today to announce that the Government of Canada is providing funding to the Muslim Legal Support Centre in Ontario and to Muslim families, healthy Muslim families in Manitoba, to help them carry out that critical work. And this funding totals the sum of $1.5 million. And that's... And that's a significant quantum of funding. The Muslim Legal Support Centre will receive $724,000 over 3 years to provide legal education, advice, and support services to Muslim community members based on their legal needs and their cultural identity. Their Legal Education and Supports for Racialized Communities in Ontario project provides workshops, clinics, and virtual legal advice for Muslim community members across the province. Healthy Muslim families, so I'm speaking to Humaira, thank you for waking up early this morning, Humaira, to be with us, will receive $788,000 over 5 years for building access to justice for racialized communities. Through this initiative, the organization will bring together volunteer mentors, legal professionals who help provide public legal education, information, and advice to low-income and immigrant Muslim community members. Ce financement est offert dans le cadre d'un programme juridique de partenariat et d'innovation qui vise à améliorer l'accès au système de justice et accroître la sensibilisation aux enjeux en matière de justice, dont le racisme. Le financement annoncé aujourd'hui est tiré des 20 et 21,5 millions de dollars promis dans le budget 2021 afin de soutenir les initiatives qui offrent de l'information et des ressources juridiques culturellement adaptées ainsi que des services de conseil juridique aux communautés racisées de partout au Canada. Voilà ce qu'améliorer l'accès à la justice signifie pour nous. Prendre des mesures pour éliminer les obstacles qui existent dans le système de justice. Aider les gens à comprendre leurs droits et libertés et rendre des ressources et des services accessibles dans leur communauté afin qu'ils se sentent à l'aise et en sécurité au moment de demander l'aide. This instills trust and confidence in our institutions. If there's anything fundamental about my role as Minister and as the Attorney General of Canada, it is ensuring confidence of Canadians in the administration of justice. Funding like this helps do exactly that. It helps us build a stronger, more inclusive democracy in a country in which people can live safe in an inclusive and welcoming communities. Practically speaking, these programs take a huge weight off the shoulders of those who are accessing them, their own clients. The law can be intimidating. We know that legal advice can be expensive. These programs make life easier for people who are working hard to deal with other concerns and paying their bills. As I have said before, and I'll say again, the promise of this country is enormous, and it belongs to everyone of every background, every faith, every identity, regardless of your means. As we celebrate Canadian Islamic History Month, I think we should recommit ourselves to that promise. And that promise includes rejecting hate and intolerance, specifically Islamophobia, and embracing diversity and equality. And what I would say to you is I'm going to end where I started. I started by saying Assalamu alaikum, which in Arabic means peace be unto you. It's a common greeting, but it's important to understand the nature of that greeting. By restoring and implementing this kind of funding, by making the justice system less confrontational and more accessible for people that are in need and people that are vulnerable, this helps give them a sense of safety, a sense of security, and ideally a sense of peace. Shukran jazilan. Merci. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question from the moderator's chair. You mentioned the Sainte-Foy massacre. I was there the day after that happened. It's probably one of the most horrifying moments in our country's history. How do you see investments like this having a practical effect on preventing something like that, or the London incident that you mentioned, from happening again?
Well, JP, thank you for the question, and it is unfortunately a day that's burned into my memory as well when I heard the news that morning. And what I'd say to you, JP, is that it's important that we sort of contextualize what transpired and figure out ways of addressing what transpired. And when it gets to the point where someone is radicalized and to the point where they will take hatred and turn it into not just gestures or comments about violence, but an actual act of violence, I think we need to look at the tools that we can use within the legal system to address that radicalization. And that begs some questions about what we were seeing online, et cetera. But I think it also speaks to an announcement like this is about ensuring that people have a means to vindicate and advocate for their rights. And I've always believed in this. It's one of the reasons why I went to law school, if I'm being honest with you, about ensuring that the justice system is not confrontational, that people see that it's there to serve all Canadians. And in investing $1.5 million in two different groups that promote access to justice, including for those that find it a bit hard to access the system, a bit unaffordable to access the system, what we're doing is we're saying that this system, this institution, is here to serve you and here to assist you. And if that means helping you ensure that you can be protected from potential or real acts of violence that have already manifested, that is undoubtedly a step in the right direction and a model that we need to be expanding.
And just as a did you want to say something?
I just want to add one small thing. On that day, the day after January 29, 2017, I was, I'm a Quebecer, first off, and I was in Montreal. We had a big vigil to mark the passing of the 6 men who passed away in that terror attack. And I was touched by the amount of people that came out in frigid cold, minus 20-degree weather, bitter cold, the day after. The vast majority of people, Quebecers, who were there in solidarity, marking those lives that were lost, were people who were not directly touched impacted in any way by that attack. And the solidarity that was there from Quebec society, by and large, and the goodwill and the human stories that came out in the days after, the 2 weeks after, throughout the press was extremely important in educating Quebecers, Canadians, of who Canadian and Quebec Muslims are. Just to add a small point on that. Thank you.
Yeah, Minister, I just wanted to ask too if you've given any more thought to the request to open up the Deschênes Commission report and some of its findings on war criminals.
So thank you for that question, JP. And what I can say to you is just sort of threefold. First of all, what the events of sort of the last 10 days in the House of Commons was unacceptable and embarrassing for all of us. I'm very pleased that the former Speaker of the House accepted full responsibility and took the honourable decision of resigning, and also that the Prime Minister had made an apology on behalf of all Canadians. I'll say also that our history with Nazis and their presence in Canada is a dark history, and it's a difficult legacy, and it's been particularly painful for the Jewish community in particular, but all survivors of the Holocaust. And what I can say to you is that senior officials within our government are actively looking at the Deschênes Commission report, and will be making recommendations on the options that will become available in the immediate future. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we have. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you joining us in the NPT Theater this morning to make this important announcement. Thank you.